Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, as we learn from St. Augustine, Doctor of the Church, while we read his book, Confessions. Welcome, Catholic pilgrims, to another day with St. Augustine. Today we learn that St. Augustine wasn't super thrilled to learn Greek. I can't say that I blame him, as it looks pretty hard. But let's go ahead and hear what he has to say by turning to page 33 to Book 1, Chapter 13. Even now I cannot fully understand why the Greek language, which I learned as a child, was so distasteful to me. I loved Latin, not the elementary lessons, but those which I studied later under teachers of literature. The first lessons in Latin were reading, writing, and counting, and they were as much of an irksome imposition as any studies in Greek. But this too was due to the sinfulness and vanity of life, since I was flesh and blood, no better than a breath of wind that passes by and never returns. For these elementary lessons were far more valuable than those which followed, because the subjects were practical. They gave me the power, which I still have, of reading whatever is set before me and writing whatever I wish to write. But in the latter lessons, I was obliged to memorize the wanderings of a hero named Aeneas, while in the meantime, I failed to remember my own erratic ways. I learned to lament the death of Dido, who killed herself for love, while all the time, in the midst of these things, I was dying, separated from you, my God and my life, and I shed no tears for my own plight. What can be more pitiful than an unhappy wretch, unaware of his own sorry state, bewailing the fate of Dido, who died for love of Aeneas, yet shedding no tears for himself as he dies for want of loving you? O God, you are the light of my heart, the bread of my inmost soul, and the power that weds my mind and the thoughts of my heart. But I did not love you. I broke my troth with you, and embraced another, while applause echoed about me. For to love this world is to break troth with you, yet men applaud and are ashamed to be otherwise. I did not weep over this, but instead I wept for Dido, who surrendered her life to the sword, while I forsook you and surrendered myself to the lowest of your created things. And if I were forbidden to read these books, I was sad not to be able to read the very things that made me sad. Such folly is held to be a higher and more fruitful form of study than learning to read and write. But now, my God, let your voice ring in my soul, and let your truth proclaim to me that it is wrong to think this. Tell me that reading and writing are by far the better study. This must be true, for I would rather forget the wanderings of Aeneas and all that goes with them than how to read and write. It is true that curtains are hung over the entrances to the schools where literature is taught, but they are not so much symbols in honor of mystery as veils concealing error. The schoolmasters need not exclaim at my words, for I no longer go in fear of them now that I confess my soul's desires to you, my God, and gladly blame myself for my evil ways so that I may enjoy the good ways you have shown me. Neither those who traffic in literature nor those who buy their wares need exclaim against me. For if I put to them the question whether it is true, as the poet says, that Aeneas once came to Carthage, the less learned will plead ignorance, and the better informed will admit that it is not true. But if I ask how the name of Aeneas is spelt, anyone who has learned to read will give me the right answer based on the agreed convention which fixes the alphabet for all of us. If I next ask them whether a man would lose more by forgetting how to read and write, or by forgetting the fancies dreamed up by the poets, surely everyone who is not out of his wits can see the answer they would give. So it was wrong of me as a boy to prefer empty romances to more valuable studies. In fact, it would be truer to say that I loved the one and hated the other. But in those days, 1 and 1 are 2, 2 and 2 are 4 was a loathsome jingle, while the wooden horse and its crew of soldiers, the burning of Troy, and even the ghost of Creusa made a most enchanting dream. futile though it was. I took 4 years of Latin in high school, and I did not appreciate learning it, so consequently, I barely remember anything. I took Latin because I wanted to be a vet, and medical terminology often uses Latin words, so I thought it would be helpful. It turns out I did not become a vet, but I did become Catholic, and I wish I had paid better attention. So, not a ton of theological or spiritual insights to glean from today's readings. It's clear that St. Augustine, especially in his youth, had a love for entertainment and probably enjoyed romance stories like the one that he refers to here today. Now, I'm going to give you a bit of a context as what he's talking about, even though he's lamenting the fact that he really liked it, just to help you understand him better and what was going on at that time in the world. So we hear about how St. Augustine enjoyed the story of Dido and Aeneas. They are from the story, the Aeneid, by Virgil. And Aeneid literally means the story of Aeneas. If you don't know the story, I'll sum it up real quick, taking information from the internet. The Aeneid is a Latin epic poem by Virgil about the Trojan hero Aeneas, who flees the fallen city of Troy to establish a new home for his people in Italy, where he becomes the ancestor of the Romans. Now, after the fall of Troy, Aeneas is guided by fate to travel to Italy. He endures storms and encounters various figures, including a prolonged stay in Carthage with Queen Dido, who tragically takes her own life after he is forced to leave. And the poem is a foundational myth for the establishment of Rome. So I've never read this story, though I have been to Troy. We got to visit there when we were living in Turkey. Very interesting place to visit. Today, it's called Troas. It's not a modern city, just an archaeological site, but I think it's definitely worth a visit. There's a great city near the archaeological site called Çanakkale. I love saying that word. It's one of my favorite cities to say, Çanakkale. And it has the big Trojan horse used in the movie Troy out for display near the water. My family got to take a picture by it. And that town has a really good market area as well to buy all kinds of Turkish goods. Anyway, you got me talking about Turkey again, and I could go on and on. But St. Augustine seems to have enjoyed this very tragic romance, and he wishes that he had preferred his studies to empty romances. So what can we take from this? What I would say is that we need to pay attention to what grabs our attention more. Is it trivial, as he says, futile things? Or is it those things which really matter to our life that are practical or very worthwhile? It's something that we can all think about, how we're spending our time, what really grabs our attention. And I think that's what we can take from today's reading. But that is all for today, Catholic Pilgrims. You got a little history/literature lesson for today. I'll see you back here again tomorrow. But until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.